Good morning from Shalom Acres. I want to come out today and talk a little bit about, I guess, some weeds and other grasses that are not really that great for our pasture. And, it's kind of the methods that we're going to use to control them. This right here in front of us is pretty nice. I mean, it's a pretty yellow flower. But it actually takes up, I don't know, it's behind kind of where our sheep are at. But it's been getting a little bit bigger each year. And I think it's time to go ahead and start doing some controls on that. So we'll show you in a little bit how we're going to control. And then also, we'll walk over to each area where we've got some hay this year. So right here is where I fed the sheep predominantly. And everywhere I put out hay this year, I ended up getting this kind of a thick broadleaf type weed. And the sheep actually do eat this, but whenever it starts getting the flower on it, or I guess where the seed pods are going to come to, they don't enjoy that as much. And there's one other seed that I have that we've eradicated on our property just by pulling it by hand, but my neighbor has a lot of it. I don't know, the name we use around here is just called goatweed. It's funny we call it goatweed, but even the goats don't eat it. But anyway, long story short, we're going to talk a little bit about pest control, or some weed control, I guess, that we're going to do here on the homestead today. Similar to what I guess they're asking them to do out at Azure Standard. Those of you that may or may not know, Azure Standard is I think one of the largest, if not the largest, organic farm in the country. And they're asking them to go ahead and spray basically Roundup and other things that I know our family doesn't want to eat. And it's kind of depressing to see that there are methods to control weeds other than just spraying chemicals. So we've done it here by combining different animals together. Still found a little bit of a gap on some of that as far as with this this weed that's here in front of me. And again, I'm not trying to claim to be any kind of specialist or anybody who's arborist or botanist or anything like that on plants. I just know that there's certain things my cows, sheep, chickens won't eat, and I just want to get it out of here. But there's other ways of doing it besides just spraying Roundup and killing everything. So we'll go through that today, and I'll put down in the links on the bottom some areas that you can support. They're out in Oregon, and maybe you can write their legislative group, and or send them some emails, call them, and let them know that it's not right to force an organic farm to potentially have to spray, in my opinion, chemicals that we know damage not only the ground but damage the body, but yet we continue to do it. Stay with us. We'll take you through how we're going to eradicate these. Okay, so you can see, some of the footage of me cutting. And what I've got here is still the difference in the grass. As far as, there's the nice fresh cut grass, and this is still it doesn't seem that invasive, but it is an invasive type plant that our sheep and cows do not regularly enjoy eating. But here's the thing I wanted to show by this video. It's the same thing that I heard last night from the CEO of Azure, or the owner of Azure. They're there's not necessarily the best tools available, and they're kind of having to figure some of it out themselves. And I guess the part that I just figured out by doing this myself is you can see the ring here that I cut around. And there's a little bit, I mean, this was all the yellow. But in this specific area is where we continued to place hay bales last year for the sheep. And you can look and see, just based on the amount of animal tracks, you know, them working it in the ground, in this particular area, they have completely eradicated, because it's all around it. There is no yellow grass there or yellow flowers. So if the animals themselves are able to take care of killing the weeds that we're wanting to get rid of, and yes, I did admit, you know, based on the hay that I bought, we did get a different type of weed that came in. But that's the whole premise of how we got this yellow weed on our property to begin with. The previous landowner of this property went to go brush hog for a friend that had a lot of this yellow stuff. He had never had, you know, this yellow flower on this property before, and I guess he left some of those seeds on the back of his brush hog, not thinking about it, and that's really how they spread. And then from our standpoint, like I told you earlier, we've eradicated goat weed on our property, but my neighbor didn't brush hog his field until late last year over here on this side. And you know, I know the wind is going to carry some of that seed over onto the fringes of our property. So our only, you know, way that we want to control it organically again is, you know, I can come through like I'm doing right now with this weed and cut it down, but history shows that that's all it does is force it to shoot out in different angles, and then you end up getting 4 to 5 seed heads on it versus 1. So I don't really want to do that. So that weed there is one that we specifically go ahead and pull out. So, you know, I think for what I'm trying to say is, it is a learning process. When you look at what the CEO of the company is saying, there's going to be some opportunity to learn. So why don't you give them the opportunity to learn and show what they've been able to do on their farm, just like I'm sharing with you all things that we've learned about how to do weed control. For not necessarily weed control, but control for plants that I know our cows and sheep will not eat. But if you look down in this grass, because look at all that Bermuda, there's other types of grass down in here. Now that I took the tops off, and it's warm outside, that Bermuda is most likely going to be able to start helping drown out some of that where that yellow flower was. And I'll be curious to see, and if I need to, I'll come back in 3 weeks, and you know, if there's an interest, I'll shoot another video and see what it looks like, because we all have similar problems out there that are trying to do this organically. But I know my first option is not going to be spraying chemicals on our property, because we eat our cows. We eat our sheep, you know, we eat fish out of our pond. We actually eat all the crops that we grow here. And that's the same reason why I don't want to buy stuff from the store. So if you're going to take a truly different approach, in this case, they're doing it on a large scale, 2,000 acres. We're doing it on a small scale, but that doesn't mean they can't figure out some other things to do. So if you can, please send emails. Please call them if you have to. And I'll be honest, this is a time where we need to stand up, make sure we're heard. Because if we're not heard in the proper manner, they're going to continue to shove GMOs and chemicals down our throat. Just wait and see what it does to our population and our health care. So this is the weed that we talked about that came in with our hay bales this year, that the sheep seem to eat. But as it grows taller and it starts getting close to seeding, which I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're getting close, they kind of stop getting a liking to it. And this area, similar to other areas on our property, so I probably have about 20 of these circles where we had hay at this year. I've got all these weeds. So right now, before they get out of control, because they do seem to, you know, they kind of come down and they compress, and I don't know if they'll eventually kill the vegetation underneath it. So what I want to try to do is, I just want to see if I can, there we go. And this might not be a terrible weed after all. It's got a very long stem to it, which is going to help break up the soil. So it may offer some opportunities to increase organic matter on our farm, which then could increase the amount of worms and break down the clay in the soil. So, you know, this may not be something that we want to get rid of, but I'm just worried about it because it looks like it could be another one of those weeds that are between the combination of our sheep and our cows they may not enjoy. But this whole benefit of the root may be something different. So we'll see. But stay with us and we'll take you through some other things that we're doing on how to control weeds in maybe, I guess, a non-typical but very typical way, I would say, on an organic farm. And I don't want to say that by anything. We're not an organically certified farm like Azure Standard. We're just a simple farm that knows what we put on our plate, and we know what we apply to our land. And to us, we know that means we're eating clean. And another thing that we did this year that is another great learning is this area here had yellow that extended quite a bit further down into this area. This is an area that I lightly disked, and we put a little bit of clover in it. And you can see, I mean, look how much yellow's over here. I did not disc this area. I started disking at about right here. And you can look down in here and see clover's starting to grow. This is a yellow flower, but that is not the same yellow flower that I was looking at earlier. So this is a completely different yellow flower. This is actually something that's edible, and our kids actually eat it. And that's all I see out here. So in this pasture, I see the edible flower. Oh, nope, I take that back. Here is one of them. So we've got one of those other species. So I'm going to come out here. That's just one. I'm just going to pull it up. Comes up pretty easy. So if I see just a few of them, I'll just pull them up. But all the other ones I see out here have been predominantly, it's been taken down a lot. So maybe just by turning the soil, which I'll be honest, I'm not a real big fan of, but that could be another area for making some changes and breaking up that life cycle. Just food for thought. If I could do just a little quick summary of, I guess, kind of where I'm at with Azure and you know, weed control in general, I guess I'd like to say a couple of different things. One, I think with anything, you've got to give it time to understand. Like just today, really hadn't thought about it a lot until I heard what was kind of being pressed on Azure Standard as far as what they were potentially having to do. And came out here, just me and my son, looked at what we've done, looked at where we're at, and within an hour, we came up with 3 action plans. And then if we look back at what we've done in years past as far as how to control the goat weed, you know, it's pretty simple. So I think whenever you create a task force, you can do stuff really quick, whether it's on a small scale or a large scale. And you don't necessarily need large amounts of people. You just need people that are willing to think outside the box. I guess that's what I'm asking for is, you know, when instead of government regulations continuing to control, do the same thing they did with you know, the old coal-fired power plants. You know, give them the opportunity, the number of years to go ahead and get the scrubbers on. Make it so it's clean air. And do the same thing. If there's invasive weeds that are taking over the county, come up with a challenge, come up with a deadline, and allow them to meet that deadline. No different than what we do here on our own farm. But I don't think it's fair to go ahead and tell somebody that they have to spray with pesticides that we know are harming people. And for those of you that don't believe that, or if you want to have some controversy on it, that's fine. Just simply type it into Google and just look it up. We choose here to do it as organic as we can. Only thing we're spraying is a little bit of neem oil, a little bit of soap every now and then. And I think our farm looks beautiful. It's It's one of those pieces where, you know, there are some weeds, but guess what? It's part of farming. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please put your comments below, and I'll be more than willing to answer the best I can. And just hope you have a blessed and wonderful day. Shalom.